Hey YouTube, today we're going to be looking at a couple heavyweights. We're going to have a little bit of fun looking at a couple big bore revolvers. And what we're going to do is compare the largest and most powerful handgun in the world of the past to the largest and most powerful handgun of the present. And before we get started, I'm going to show you neither one of these revolvers have anything in them, and we are cleared to make this video. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with this one. This is a Smith and Wesson 629. This one happens to be a 629-3, more of a vintage revolver. And this is chambered in 44 Magnum. And I'm going to show you some of the close-ups of this gun. It says Smith and Wesson here on the side. Has the Smith and Wesson logo here on the frame. And this one's outfitted in a set of Target wood grips, vintage wood grips. And on the other side, it says where it's made, and it says 44 Magnum. So a little bit of history about the 44 Magnum was it came out around 1955, and it was released by Smith and Wesson. And what they did is they released a Model 29. The Model 29 was offered in blued and nickel. The original ones were just blued, and it was deemed the most powerful handgun in the world. Now, that was true all the way up to around the 1990s, when you had a couple of these oddball calibers and a little bit more powerful calibers come out, like the 454 Gasol and comes to mind, and a couple other things. They just had a couple more powerful rounds, but this was always been known as the most powerful handgun in the world. Now, it was a pretty popular gun up until the 1970s, when the movie Dirty Harry came out, and Harry Callahan, Inspector Harry Callahan, carried a Model 29 Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum and told everybody that it was the most powerful handgun in the world, and people went nuts, and you couldn't get one anywhere. But this one happens to be a Model 629. This one was made in the late 80s, early 90s, and the difference in the 629 and the 29 is just this one's made in stainless steel. Now, this one's a little bit unique because it has the full underlug on it, and instead of the 6.5-inch traditional barrel, it has a 6-inch barrel, and it has no flutes and cylinders, a non-fluted cylinder on it. So it's a little bit unique looking. So when you open this up, this is a 6-shot double action revolver. And double action meaning you can cock the hammer every single time, pull the trigger, and you can also work it in double action. Now, this one has an extremely good trigger on it because the gunsmith has worked the inside of this one, and the actual single action on this thing is almost non-existent. You almost just touch it and it goes off, almost a little too light. But the double action is where all the money is, and it is really smooth going through. It's probably about a 7.5-pound double action pull, which is awesome for a double action revolver. And this one here features adjustable rear sights for windage and elevation. They're target sights, and just has a black blade up front. Very cool gun, very powerful gun, and it's built on Smith & Wesson's end frame. For many years, the end frame was the largest frame that Smith & Wesson came out with. They came out with the end frame around the 1920s, when they invented the 357 Magnum and made the registered Magnum, and it was built on the end frame. So when they produced the 44 Magnum, they wanted to put it on their largest frame that was the strongest to handle the pressures of the 44 Magnum cartridge. Now, we'll look at the next one here, the one that surpassed it. So this one was the most powerful handgun in the world from 1955 all the way up to around the 1990s. But in 2003, everybody seemed to be in this race to see who could produce the largest and most powerful handgun, and this animal here came out in 2003 by Smith & Wesson, and this is a 5-shot double action revolver. And once again, double action means you can pull the hammer back, fire it, and it will work in double action also. Same features with the other one, as it has the adjustable sights on the back for windage and elevation, target sights, but this one has a red ramp up front. This is a 4-inch configuration, and this is built on Smith & Wesson's X frame. The X frames came out in the early 2000s, and it appears to me that it's about twice as big as the Smith & Wesson end frames that everybody used to think of as the largest frame. 4-inch configuration has a built-in muzzle brake on them, which you actually need because of the massive amounts of recoil on this. Now, the difference in this one, this is a newer one, so it has the lock that everybody hates on it, and it does not have a firing pin mounted on the hammer like the older one does here. The Smith and Wesson has a firing pin mounted on the hammer. A lot of people like that. I really don't care. This one's just got a frame mounted firing pin on it. Now, where you start seeing the differences here is the size of this back strap and how large it is, the opening here, and the size of the cylinder. The reason they made this 5-shot is these things are so large, these cartridges are. If they made this a 6-shot, this would probably be about as big around as a football. And it's pretty close on it sits right now. So I'll show you some of the close-ups of this. It says 500 Smith and Wesson Magnum right here on the barrel. That's the Smith and Wesson logo on it. It's wearing a pair of very cushioned rubber grips, which you really need for the recoil. And when you flip it over, it says where it's made. On this side, it says Smith & Wesson 500, and right up here, it just says Smith & Wesson. Very cool gun. The X-frame is absolutely a very large frame revolver. Now, I'm going to show you some of the comparisons of what an older N-frame and a newer X-frame looks like. So the biggest difference you'll notice right away is the size of the cylinders. And I'm going to try and do this as best as I can on camera and show you the cylinder size difference. And it's not even close, folks. So I'm going to pick this gun up. We're going to hold these cylinders side by side, and you can see the absolutely huge difference in the cylinder size. It's not even close. This little 44 Magnum looks like a BB gun next to the size of the cylinder on this, and you see the size of the holes in it as compared to the 44 Magnum. The hole size isn't a whole lot different, but it's quite a bit, you know. But this cylinder is just really small. This back strap's a little thin on the top, and there's a lot bigger and beefier 44 Magnums out on the market today that probably are a little bit stronger than these older 629s here, these end frames. The problem I have with these is, and this is just a hypothesis, is when you're looking at some of the newer ones like the Ruger Red Hawks or the Colt Anacondas, I think they could probably handle a steadier diet of 44 Magnum heavy loads all day, every day than this one could. This one's just a little bit weaker looking to me. It's just not quite as beefed up or everything. I've never personally heard of anybody having a problem with one of these frames. It's just they're just a little bit lighter frame than the Rugers and the Colts. Now, this thing does have quite a bit of recoil on them because it is a lot lighter than the Colt and the Ruger Red Hawk. So you're going to feel a lot more felt recoil, but it's not bad. It's very manageable on it. 44 Magnum is a real powerful round. It's just a lot of fun to shoot. Now this thing here, there's nothing you can do about it, folks. This thing's going to have a massive amount of recoil, and this is not a gun that you want to take to the range every time you go and shoot a whole box of ammunition through it. It's just not plausible to do that. This gun is very hard to control, and this is not one that you want to have a beginner shooting on it. Now we'll compare some of the ballistics on a 44 Magnum and a 500 Magnum. On a 44 Magnum with like a 240 green ball, and these are very general statistics, I'm going to tell you. 240 green bullet, you're looking at a muzzle velocity of about 1,350 feet per second. That's moving, folks. I mean, that is fast for a bullet that large. And you're looking at producing energy around 980 to 1,000 feet upon impact. That is cooking, folks. That is why that was the most powerful handgun in the world. But when you look at this new modern 500 on this big old X frame, it really starts to walk away from the 44 Magnum. You're looking at around 1,500 feet per second on a 300 grain bullet, and the felt energy upon impact is going to be around 3,000 pounds on this. So it's going to be about 3 times as powerful as the famous 44 Magnum that Dirty Harry deemed the most powerful handgun in the world. So the size is a huge difference, the power is a huge difference, and the recoil is going to be a lot different. But what do you use these for? Well, both of them can be used for hunting or for backpacking through the woods for like bear protection or large game protection that a smaller caliber would have a problem doing. 44 Magnum is still a relevant gun and would still work just fine on it. Just some people got to have the biggest and the baddest, and when they want to do that, this is the most powerful handgun in the world, and this will get it done. You just have to understand that this is going to be really hard to control. The recoil is going to be massive, and your first shot really needs to count, because if you're protecting yourself, the amount of recoil on this, you really need to follow up with your second shot if you need to take one. The frame sizes are absolutely a huge difference between the X frame and the large N frame on the Smith and Wesson, and I just wanted to do a comparison to show you an N frame 44 Magnum and a Smith and Wesson 500 X frame. Never compared these two, and I figured it'd be a neat video to do today. If you have any questions on either one of these guns, I have separate videos on each one of these where I go more into depth about them and the history of them, but feel free to reach out to me. I'll answer any questions that you may have, and thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.